What are your thoughts about 28 to 32 being the sweet spot for people to get hitched?
As a woman, if marriage is your goal and you know you want to get married, your early 20s, sure, do whatever's clever, but by 25, stop playing around.
But I do think starting earlier is better. I think it allows you to grow with the person.
And I do think 28, 32 is a good sweet spot because of where we are in the modern world. Do I think ideally it's a sweet spot in general? No, I think it should be younger.
When you try to marry someone at 21 and 22 and expect him to leave the house and know exactly what to do, then you might be leading yourself down a road of disappointment.
Apparently, the younger, well, maybe not the younger, there's a certain age range, the sweet spot where if you get married, the likelihood of success, long-term relationship maybe working out, the divorce, decreasing. Apparently, the golden age is 28 to 32, apparently by a sociologist from Utah who said, hey, man, we found that around that age, hey, it's a golden, it's beautiful, bellissimo, right? But 33, little gray area, right? So what are y'all thoughts in regards to, does it make sense that there is a sweet spot in terms of when people are coming together and choosing to form bonds? Like maybe is it too young? Is it too old? What are y'all thoughts about 28 to 32 being the sweet spot for people to get hitched?
So as someone who got married early in life, i.e. 21, I actually kind of agree with the whole 28. As a matter of fact, if I had to do it again, I would wait till I'm at least 25 because you're still kind of developing who you are. You're still trying to figure out the ins and outs of life. And it's a little bit harder, I think, when you have to develop and who you are when you're with someone, because they're also in the same process of learning who they are and developing themselves too. It's basically you have two individuals who are partially formed. And as a person who believes in lifelong learning, I think that this was a lesson of almost, I want to call it struggle a little bit, because we basically had to mature together, right? And considering at the age in which our frontal lobe and all our brain fully developed, I also think that so happened to play into that, because apparently we are actually fully mature at the age of 27, brain activity wise. So 28 to 32, I believe that we are able to make those logical, rational decisions and move forward. But more importantly, you already recognize what works for you, what doesn't work for you. You're at the point where you should have a job or whatever you should be somewhat in your career. You shouldn't be floundering, trying to figure out what you still need to do in life. And to be honest, if it's as a woman, if marriage is your goal and you know you want to get married, your early 20s, sure, do whatever's clever. But by 25, stop playing around. Start dating with intentions, because if this is the sweet spot, then go ahead and make it happen. Now, I'm not discouraging marrying earlier or marrying later, because currently in our society, we actually have a tendency to marry later, especially women, and to include having babies now even later. I think last week, Nick, you mentioned that women in their 40s for the first time ever are outpacing in pregnancies compared to teens. And so I think that this study come at a pretty much appropriate time, considering where we are in this so-called gender war that we're currently residing in. So I say kudos with it. I think it actually helps guide people to start dating with intentions, particularly if you're a woman.
I think it's great. I think it's great because I actually married my first wife, my late wife, around that same age range. I think we would have still been married had she not passed away. Don't get me wrong, the marriage wasn't perfect. Every marriage has problems, but there's something about like growing in the same rhythm with the person that you're with. And when people are older people tend to want somebody who looks like what they could pull when they were younger, right? And then so there's that dissonance that happens as you get older. It's harder for the older women to be as appealing to the men their age, and it's harder for the older men to be as appealing probably to the women their age. And so there's this dissonance that happens. People start looking for somebody 10 years younger, 10 years older, and then that gets really crazy, because then those people aren't in the same time zones, like in terms of phases of their lives. I know a couple of couples with 10 years between them, and one of them's like on there, hey, let's get our legacy together, and the other one's like, yo, turn up, it's Thursday night, right? But they're 10 years apart. And that makes sense in the seasons of their lives. So I think that number is really good. I mean, personally, that was my number. I told my wife, first wife, I was like, listen, let's go and get married, because I want to have our last kid by 32. So when the child turns 18, going off to college, I'm 50, I'm done. Like I had done the math and everything. So, I mean, shout out to everybody whenever they choose to have their family, as long as you're raising them with love, that's all that really matters. But I do think starting earlier is better. I think it allows you to grow with the person, allows you to mature. And I think when you marry someone that young, even as you all age together, I think you still kind of see them as that person that they were when you got married, right? They still kind of hold that value with you, and you guys grow up together. As opposed to when you're 45 and you're looking at out there at the dating pool, you're like, "Ugh, she is not held up well. Nah, that's not aging well. Look at her mama. That's not. No, no, no." So then you end up like Shannon Sharp. Okay, I'm done there. Y'all go ahead.
Not look at her mama, because I was kind of extra. No, I get it. I actually, when I hear these kind of stats, I'm always a little bit of a cynic. And I think that because as times change, we're always evolving and moving. And so is the social norms and kind of what we do. So I think earlier in this century, it was advantageous to marry young and to, have all these benefits because women weren't afforded a lot of things. So for that benefit, women were like, yeah, I'm 18, college is not necessarily what I'm looking at. And this is an option. Marriage was security in a lot of ways. So now when I hear this, new stat about being 28 to early 30s, I think it kind of fits because if you really think about it from a psychology standpoint, your prefrontal cortex, that memory and decision making place right there that kind of regulates all of your emotional mood states. It doesn't really fully formally finish growing in a man until 26. And that's no shade, that's science. So, because of that, if you think about the fact that a person isn't completely as fully developed, they're not going to be making the best decisions. They're not always going to be, in the right direction of their thought processes. And so, if we're waiting till 28 and there's a maturity factor for both people, hopefully, if they decide to do college or they're ingrained in a career somewhere, I think it'll lead to more success for sure. So, I'm here for it.
This is, as I was hearing you talk, Tia, this is the part where I'm perplexed. I feel like this is my perplexed episode, right? Because, like, for example, biology tells us that, let's say, for example, a young lady can have children at a very early age, like the cycle begins where her body's prepared, right? But you mentioned like the, frontal cortex, whatever the fuck you call that at 25 doesn't fully develop, right? Cool. And then around 35, it becomes high risk, right? So it seems like if I'm going to follow that logic, maybe the first 12 years, what's even the point? Right. And then you have 10 more years of fruitfulness when if we're judging when we should do certain things by this whole prefrontal cortex thing. Right. Because for me, looking back on human history, I don't know that the cavemen were like, hey, knock, knock. No. I don't think people were doing that. Like, no. I don't think they had the language. But now we got prefrontal cortex, whatever lobe, that they're right. But anyways, so that's why I say I'm perplexed because when we use this argument, and the funny thing is, I am for people getting married younger. And I do think 28, 32 is a good sweet spot because of where we are in the modern world. Do I think ideally it's a sweet spot in general? No, I think it should be younger, right? This is somebody who got married at 27 and my wife was 24 when we got married. Ironically, when we kind of reached maybe a different point in our relationship, both of us would have been in this 28 to 32 range. But we were married to get there. There's a possibility that had I not been married around this time, I don't know that I would ever be married necessarily, right? Especially when how things are trending in terms of telling people, oh, you got to do this first. You got to get your career first, right? The way that we socialize young people, I think we really got to look at that overall if we're going to have this conversation. If a person is expected to join the military, not expected, if a person can make the choice to join the military at the age of 18 and fight and kill for their country, there's a certain level of expectation that we're having for them. Whether or not their prefrontal, whatever the fuck you want to call it, is, developed or not, right? Or when they choose to, drink alcohol. So we give young people a lot of responsibility that we don't prepare them for, is what I'm saying. Right? I don't think that the traditional model of having to go through 18, many of us didn't even learn how to balance a proper checkbook, even with 12 years of a fucking education in front of us. And so now these kids got so much more to learn, so much more they're being exposed to. When I was growing up, we had to sneak magazines to look at porn. Now it's on X. The fuck? It's funny because my kid is 4, but he looks like a fucking teenager. Like the way he moves around, it's not regular 4-year-old shit that used to be back in the day. You know, he's having moods and he's communicating about his feelings. What the fuck is going? He's not even 4 yet. So what I'm saying is that we're the ones who want to advocate for this moving the shit back when we really need to be moving the shit up some, including marriage, right? But here's what I like about the stat though, because if a person is 28 getting married, I would suggest you get to know the person at least about 3-4 years before you say I do. Me personally. Some of y'all can discern a motherfucker in 1 year. Okay. Good luck with that. But some of us need about 3-4. And even for those of us who had 3-4, we still need about 3-4 more to be sure. You know what I'm saying? Like, I met my wife, we was dating for about 3-4 years. I loved her, my God. And then we were married for about 4. It was like, touch and go. You know what I'm saying? Like, so I feel like the reason why the age to me is less important than how we mature, how we teach, how we grow people to be prepared. Right. I do think that the age makes sense because that's just where we are. But what doesn't make sense though is if you're a woman at 32, want to have kids, and let's say you want to do it naturally, you want to have the full and natural experience. So now you got to meet the dude, build a relationship, get with him, have a relationship, maybe have a marriage, and then have kids. Like, how does that math add up? I know the science is changing the game. Listen, I'm a person, we're a family who benefited from that. But we were fortunate. There's a lot of people who go through the IVF cycle, multiple of cycles, some of whom don't have the money for that. So for all y'all just thinking that y'all finna have the outcomes that you might see on Instagram, I hate to break it to you. That's not always going to be the case, right? So I hear y'all because I think it does make sense. I'm just saying we can raise our kids to be smarter, to be better prepared, to make better choices, right? And if marriage, which I think, it's funny because the other day, like I am conscious of showing affection in front of my son so that he can see what this looks like. I am happy that I can be here and maybe be a model of, hey, this family thing is a bit of all right. You know what I'm saying? You might want to try it when you get older. So I hope that for him, he's going to be more mature than I was, more prepared than I was, but he might even be the same age, right? 27, 28, because he met Shorty, right? They built together for about 3-4 years and he recognized the value. And I'm going to say this and land on this particular point. Y'all don't recognize that this is the most fruitful years to find the type of nigga that you say you want. Low key, right? Because some of y'all want the end, but y'all ain't there yet. You know what I'm saying? So when you're both kind of at a stage in life where y'all both like, hey, look at the world, we outside, we building, you might have be more open to building with someone. I think it's a great time to build with someone. I get why you might not want to be 35 building with somebody, but 20-something, 25, it's the best time to build with somebody. You know what I'm saying? So I would just encourage people to young people in particular, and I'll land with this, even though I said that before and I lied. There was a young man that was at Best Buy. I ended up buying a phone today from him. And you know why? He asked me what I do. I said, hey, I do marketing. I got a podcast. What is it about? Like, it's about relationships and marriage. Like, yeah, you know what? I'm with a girl right now. And I think I'm going to marry her. He was like maybe about 20-something. Right? It reminded me of why I do this podcast, right? Because it's like we want to encourage young people not to turn away from marriage. Marriage is a beautiful thing. It's just that I think people put it in a certain box. It doesn't have to be in that box. I'm going to wait till I have all my ducks in a row and be a perfect man to finally settle down. It don't got to be that, fam, right? Because nobody's expecting to be perfect in your 20s. You can fuck up a little bit and still build something in your 20s. When you get to be in your 30s, not so much. So why not? So anywho, I bought the phone. I was there for an hour, and I hope he marries that girl, because if he does, I'm going to find him. You lied to me to sell me these goddamn phones, but go ahead. I'm sorry. It was a tangent.
I have a little bit of pushback in regards to the whole...
Pushback there.
First of all.
You like that? That was nice, right? That was, no?
It was a good little razzle-dazzle, I see.
A little razzle-dazzle, a little something different? Okay, thank you.
Black people never lived in caves, first of all. That's the first thing. We were hunters and gatherers, and that matters. And then I think what you literally kind of proved my point, talking about the evolution and the changes over time, because what has the brain in the last 2 million years done? It's evolved. And so, yes, it does matter that now today we can consider the prefrontal cortex.
Now
you got me messed up. And consider these things as good factors when we think about kind of what marriage looks like, because you want someone who is a good decision maker. You want someone who is a leader. When you try to marry someone at 21 and 22 and expect him to lead the house and know exactly what to do, then you might be leading yourself down a road of disappointment. I had a crackhead tell me on like year 4 of my marriage, no lie. He said, when you reach year 5, that's when you know you can make this last for forever, but not until then. And I'm like, okay. And he's like, because in 5 years, you've endured and went through everything, the ups, the downs, money issues, whatever else may come, and you've learned how to work through them. And at that point, you can say this is a true marriage. But keep in mind, people go back and get their vows renewed and all that stuff. People think that it's just a token of appreciation or love, but really, it's because the person you are today is not the person that I married 20 years ago. I want to marry and commit to this person that you've grown into being while we've been together, and say that I love you just as much as I love you then, even though you've changed. And that is the premise of a vow renewal. So I think when you think about like the brain and how it works and how it contributes to emotional stability and regulation, if you want a good partner who's not toxic, who's not narcissistic or caught up on some attachment issues, you want to make sure that they've done the work. Go to therapy, call me, right? But you can also say that I'm 22, meeting my partner at 23, I've graduated at 25, and I can look at marriage at 28 because I've done the work to kind of prepare the foundation for this house to be built upon. And that's more important to me. Like, I want to know that you're in a place where you can make decisions and be a leader and do what it takes to be successful in this marriage, because longevity is the key, right?
I feel that's a great last word. Does anybody else not want to let Tia have the last word? See how I because they say I always got to have the last word. I'm like, no, Tia she nailed that. Nailed it.